My talk then is going to be about climate change, abrupt climate change, and the talk that's beginning to emerge now about geoengineering. Now, for people who don't know, if you listen to the telly or the radio, you hear people talking about dangerous climate change. And for years, they've been talking in terms of if we go over 2 degrees Celsius of warming, that would represent dangerous climate change. Now, what you and I might think of as being dangerous is slightly different to what a scientist would call dangerous. For me, when they talk about dangerous, I tend to think absolute catastrophe that kills most life on planet Earth. The idea about the 2 degrees Celsius limit was that if the planet warmed by 2 degrees Celsius, we would suffer the runaway greenhouse effect. There would be a series of positive feedbacks, like methane being released from the Arctic, from tundra, from peat bogs, frozen. Currently it's frozen, the methane is frozen in peat and other substances, and it can't get into the atmosphere because it's frozen solid. But as the Arctic is warming very quickly indeed, there's evidence already of it beginning to come into the atmosphere. Methane levels globally are beginning to rise very slightly. Now, scientists have used that expression for a long period of time. It was generally accepted that we mustn't allow the planet to warm over 2 degrees Celsius, otherwise we'd get all these what are called positive feedbacks kicking in, and that would make planet Earth almost uninhabitable. Very few people and very few species would survive that. So the idea was, everybody went along with the assumption, let's not go over 2 degrees Celsius. But in fact, way below that level, we're getting far more extreme weather events, we're getting more extreme hurricanes, extreme tornadoes, more extreme flooding, more extreme drought. And the Alliance of Low-Lying Nations went to the last international conference last year, and they said, no, we don't like 2 degrees Celsius, because if we sign up to 2 degrees Celsius, that means our annihilation. You wipe us off the map. The very low-lying island states like Bermuda, low-lying countries like much of Bangladesh, they get wiped out. So they said, we want a temperature increase limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, remarkably, every single country committed to that in Paris at the conference last year. They haven't got the plans in place to stop that from actually happening, but they did commit to it, because they acknowledged that there would be so much pain, so much loss of wildlife, so much loss of human life. They said we can't allow the temperatures to go over 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's already bad enough. We're told by various bodies, United Nations bodies, scientific bodies that report to the UN, that we're already killing about 400,000 people per annum. Most are children. Around about 340,000 infants a year are being killed by climate change. That's the increased spread of disease in our rapidly warming world. But something's gone wrong, and the world of science is now getting very alarmed indeed. We had a rapid increase in temperatures in the 1990s. Global temperatures levelled off from 2000 to about the year 2010, and now we've had a big spike, a big increase in temperatures. Now, between the year 2015 and 2016, we had an El Nino event. Now, we've had El Nino events before, but this one has really produced a very big increase in average temperatures. You go back to 10 years ago, year 2006, we're about 0.8 degrees Celsius of warming. But now, in 2014, we hit about 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming. 2015, 1.2 degrees Celsius of warming. 2016 is likely to just beat the temperature record broken in 2015. So the world of science is just saying the positive feedbacks have kicked in early. They've begun to emerge much more quickly than we expected, and we are in serious trouble. Dennis, where am I up to so far? Sorry? So, what the scientists are doing is they're saying that we need to look at some kind of intervention, something that is actually going to put things right, and they're talking about geoengineering. Now, if you look up geoengineering, you can see loads of documentaries on YouTube and what have you, and people talk about putting mirrors up in space and reflecting some of the sunlight away. And the scientists have already said, no, that's not going to work. First of all, it's going to cost too much to put the mirrors up there. And secondly, what if it goes wrong? What if the mirrors are put in the wrong alignment and somehow they reflect a bit more sunlight at us than was reflected away? Not going to work. So they rejected that. The other favourite that a lot of people in the world of science were talking about was to mimic the effects of volcanoes. And that is when you get a series of volcanoes go off, you can have an effect whereby all the ash in the upper atmosphere begins to reflect sunlight away. And so what they said was we can do that with chemicals, put them into the upper atmosphere and reflect sunlight away. Now, the downside to that was that climate modelling was done on that. And some of the models said that if, depending on the particles that you put up into the upper atmosphere, they could wash out in rain, land on the poles, and they'll come down as a slightly sooty colour. So as a consequence, you actually get more sunlight being absorbed, more heat absorbed, and you actually end up warming the planet more than you expected. So the climate modelers are saying, we don't think we should go down that route. So they're right. The current favourite is something called marine cloud brightening, where scientists are saying we need about 100 ships built unmanned to suck up seawater, spray the particles into the atmosphere, and if they're small enough, they'll reflect sunlight away. White clouds will reflect sunlight away. But if they get the wrong size, they'll appear grey and it will absorb heat. So that is the absolute mess we now find ourselves in. Scientists are saying humanity's out of time. And I was out of time. How many seconds was I out of time by? Okay, but I may be 20 seconds out. I tried. I gave it my best shot. Q&A. Any questions? Any points? Malcolm.
I saw on, I think it was Channel 4 during the week, that there's a new, latest humanitarian crisis throughout the government in northern Nigeria.
Yes.
You saw that. And obviously, it's a war-torn area. They were saying that climate change was adding to that. I think, if I remember correctly, they said 7 million people in danger of starving.
Yeah.
And it's all gone under the radar.
Yeah.
I just wondered if we knew how climate change was contributing to that. Because if what you say is right, this is just the first of many.
That's right. The Pentagon did a report on what were the military implications were of climate change some years ago, and they said that it was going to cause far greater stress within nations and between nations. You're going to get more extreme weather events, including droughts. Now, what's happened in Syria and Nigeria are examples of that. Now, again, if you do a Google search, you're going to find people who are going to argue that part of the factor behind what happened with Boko Haram in Nigeria and what happened in Syria was increased stress upon individuals and nations caused by climate change. Extreme droughts that were lasting much longer than would normally be the case. So I think military experts around the world would say there is definitely a connection between climate change and international conflict and conflict within nations. We're in trouble. As a species, we're in trouble. Also, of course, our planet is in trouble, and all species on this planet are in deep trouble. Nigel.
I saw an old movie this recently, and David Brown tomorrow, and there is a weather event. But basically, one of the truths that came out of that film was that there have been a number of occurrences around the world where frozen mammoths have been found, quick frozen, with food in their stomachs. So they have obviously, there's been something happened. Yeah. Where the temperature has dropped really, really low very quickly. Yeah. And as I say, these animals are just frozen. Yeah.
There is a movie, I don't know how many people have seen it, but it's a sci-fi movie. It was made with a political message, and that was The Day After Tomorrow. And that movie, this particular scenario is mentioned in there where you disrupt the climate so much that you get incredibly extreme weather events. And this is where incredibly cold air is suddenly sucked down into the lower atmosphere. And if it did come down as low as us, life on the surface of the planet, it could freeze us solid in seconds. And that is what is believed to have happened there. But that is still sci-fi. I don't know necessarily that we can expect that as a scenario in the future, but it's yeah. The key thing is, though, we don't yet understand what that process was that caused that. Whatever the outcome, though, on that particular piece of evidence, though, the key message is we are in deep trouble. Any other questions or points people want to make? And also, Dennis, I can time over other people, but you want to keep me to 5 minutes on this as well. Another minute and a bit left. Yeah, sorry, yes? It's Sarah. Sorry, Sarah, the light's shining on me. I can't see you.
I'm just wondering if the problem with geo-engineering is that, again, it's something human interrupting what is the natural occurrence, and we've got ourselves into this mess, but at the same time, should we just not just stop everything now and just let the planet do its thing to rebalance itself, rather than because we don't know that geoengineering is actually going to cause more trouble than it would be.
Yeah.
I mentioned that at the beginning, that there are real downsides and risks with geoengineering. One of the great risks you could argue is that, in fact, if we say that we're going to take that route, you could find polluters saying, oh, well, in that case, there's a solution. We can carry on just burning oil and gas and just carry on as before. So
I would actually say, stop doing what we're doing right now.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think what I hope is that I'd like people to understand that there is a completely unprecedented urgency to this. We have to change. Now, we can discuss other issues around this, perhaps other points people make, maybe we can come back to this, but there are people who are trying to find a new way of breaking through. And Jason is one of those people who's trying to find a new way of breaking through, trying to punch a way through the deadlock and find a new way of getting governments to change their approach.